Welcome back to Gameday Tarps podcast, episode 23, after Super Bowl weekend. How are we doing, gentlemen?
Doing pretty good, bud.
Quite the Super Bowl, Reilly. Let me just say that for everybody out there. That was a wild ride. Only one of us here were pretty much happy. Dakota, your
Yes,
Chiefs
sir.
go back to back. Congrats.
Yeah, I could have worn my Mahomes jersey, but I did commit to the 49ers, so I didn't put it on. And they blew
And I know you put a wager on them.
Yeah, they cost me money. That was unfortunate. First time ever sports betting. That sucked. But I knew as soon as they only settled for a field goal in overtime, I knew it was over. I was like, you can't give Mahomes the ball, and all he needs to do is score one touchdown. Like, good luck.
If it were the Lions in there, I feel like the Lions gave the Chiefs a run for their money because they did beat them this year, and but again, San Francisco just bested them in the fourth quarter of the NFC Championship. So, but and then KC got the best of San Fran. So the rest is history. Back-to-back champs. Let's start looking forward to next season.
Back to back to back. Kansas
Repeat,
City.
buddy.
I don't doubt it. But for those who didn't see it and for those who care, I don't know who wouldn't have seen it, but Super Bowl 58, it was Kansas City over San Francisco 49ers, 25-22 in overtime. Mahomes won his third Super Bowl and his third Super Bowl MVP. And, we got to say this, got to throw this out there. A little bit of shade to all the people, because personally I don't care. But for everyone who's mad about Taylor Swift, she was only on screen for 54 seconds. It was less than 1% of the entire Super Bowl. So for anyone who cares and anyone who's mad about seeing Taylor Swift, she wasn't on TV that much, which is good to see. Anything else, so boys? Dakbar, I mean, this is your moment. These guys, they won. This is your chance to throw it out there from all the doubters.
I was just waiting for you guys to go off, honestly, but I mean, Mahomes, do you know?
Yeah.
Dakbar, you better just pull a me and start getting some championship swag under your belt. Just start go ordering on Fanatics, go on a shopping spree, start getting some championship gear, man.
I guess that's a no. Silence.
Guy doesn't want a championship sweater, back-to-back champs, no shit like that. Wow.
My guy thinks money grows on trees.
I didn't even get
Buddy.
back-to-back champs for Lightning.
Wow, fake fans, man.
And back-to-back-to-back Eastern Conference champions. I didn't get in.
I mean, okay, you know what? I will further that comment, though, because I wasn't shopping in Kelowna today, and boy, the inflation rate on some shit, like sweaters and even t-shirts and hats, like, I was looking at lids for a simple hat, okay? Just a simple Colorado hat. $51, okay? T-shirts, 65. Sweaters are over $100 now. A simple sweater like this, $100.
Yeah.
Like,
Especially
it
if
is
it's Under Armour or anything. Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's ridiculous. But I mean, it's cool to own championship gear because how many times could you say you've seen your team win a championship in your lifetime, right? Like that just goes back to it. Like you are part of it, you witnessed it, and it's kind of cool to see your team win championships. But when they jack the prices, it's almost criminal.
Are we counting all our teams?
Well, I mean, whatever you're a fan of the most, right? You could be a Steelers fan. Do you want all six, Super Bowl championship gear, or like I don't know, or you could be, the Detroit Red Wings or Montreal Canadiens fan. Do you want a T-shirt from every single time they won the cup? But whatever ones I guess meant the most to you. You know what I'm saying?
Fair enough.
Like maybe your favorite player was on the team, guys, and then you're like, fuck, I could always remember that forever. Like I remember last year I got a 2022 Colorado Avalanche Stanley Cup shirt, and on the back was every player that was on that team with their signature. And I thought that was pretty cool. Like little things like that.
Too many men. Okay, let's move on. Just kidding. Yeah, but no, let's get into it. Let's get into the episode here because I think we'll start off in Toronto, where there was news on Maple Leafs captain John Tavares fighting the CRA, Canada Revenue Agency, over his $8 million tax bill. He thinks that he should owe 15% on his US dollar $15.3 million signing bonus. But CRA says he should owe 38%. I honestly don't know anything about this tax side of things, but at the end of the day, I know I would be fighting if I didn't think I had to pay $8 million in taxes either. But again, that comes with living in Ontario, I guess. Just
Playing in Canada.
I mean, no wonder no one wants to play here. No wonder Gaudreau left. No wonder Tkachuk left. Matt, Tkachuk is probably making like $8 million more on his deal going to Florida instead of staying in Calgary. Like, that is just ridiculous to think. Like, it's useless, man.
Well, especially Toronto, like, you have enough pressure from the media itself, and then when you're being taxed up the ass with, from the CRA, it's like, it's not lucrative. Okay, hey, I get to play for one of the biggest markets in the NHL, yippee, but, when I'm getting taxed to no end by the tax man from the CRA, like, what's so lucrative of that, Like, it's not even fun. You maybe see a chunk of that, and then another chunk just gets sent over to the government. Compared to like Texas, Florida, like where it's so lenient down there. That's why it's so, appealing to these players to want to go play down south compared to Canada. All these guys, they always want to leave.
Isn't Arizona's tax free too, isn't it? I believe.
Then throw them in there too, the South, right? All these Southern teams.
I wanted to know. I don't know what Matthews' payout is year per year. I forget. But if his highest amount is like his last year, like no wonder he made it that so he could go back to Arizona and cash in tax free on his last year of his deal. Weird thing, I didn't really see anything on this, and then it came up was Nick Bonino clearing waivers to terminate his contract. So I don't know what happened there with Nick Bonino. I'm not quite sure. I don't know if he's done.
To play in the AHL.
Oh, that's what it was? Okay, I didn't see. I mean, that's kind of weird. Like, he's a great fourth line center, but that's it. And I guess he thinks he can find a home somewhere, which he probably can. Like, I mean, teams could use him big time. Like a team like Toronto could literally use Nick Bonino again, just as a fourth line center. But other than that, I mean, go down and prove your worth, I guess. But if you're frustrated, then if you want to take one more shot at a cup, I guess don't go down.
I don't know. Pittsburgh's struggling some more. Maybe they might want him on the third line for the third time.
That's where he's been his best.
Right? If they're desperate enough to want that depth scoring, they could ask him to come back.
Exactly. And they need him. All right, this is going to be a good hot topic here. This is next year's Winter Classic game. Chicago at home at Wrigley Field versus the St. Louis Blues. I know, Dallas, you're not happy about this. I know we're going to contest you based on the fan base, but let's break this one down. Chicago versus St. Louis in Chicago. Again, how we feel.
Well, actually, I'll let you know what, Dakota, if you want to have a partake in this conversation, I'll let you take the reins because I feel like I want to finish strong on this topic. So go ahead if you want to, but
for me, it just comes down to money. Obviously, Bedard's the hot topic, right? So give him a Winter Classic game. Hopefully, bring in some viewership. And I think that's just all what it comes down to.
But it also like we've talked about this a few times, Dakota, off camera and stuff. Like it's the fans' fault. The fans don't want to see Chicago again. Then watch the Vegas versus Seattle game. It was a flop. It had the least viewership of any outdoor game. That right there sets the precedent. Tampa versus Nashville, low watch rate. Who else had one? Dallas had one. I forget who they versed, but that was a low watch rate. Yeah, like all the South teams, they don't get the eyeballs. And the newer teams, which they thought would get the eyeballs, they didn't get it. So what does the NHL have to do? They're still trying to keep the salary cap up for these owners. And the owners probably will just send it back to Chicago. At least we're all going to get a revenue split from the game that's going to make a difference in our pockets rather than, what's $4 million in revenue split between the 32 teams? Like, it's nothing, right? So why even risk that when you can get up into like the $7, $8, $10 million in revenue off that Chicago game? I mean, and like, no, I don't know if anyone's necessarily happy about the two teams, but it's the fans' fault. Like, you can't blame anyone but the fans for not driving traffic to the smaller market teams or to the new teams or to the teams in the South. It's specifically like, why isn't Anaheim getting a game? Well, first off, they still can't find a venue that can host them because it's too warm. And second off, no one watches the Anaheim Ducks play hockey anyways. First off, they suck. Second off, they're just in California, and it drives their views down. So they're not going to get a game until they're good, and that's like 10 years from now. So I just don't think that, like, I know you have an argument, Dally, but I don't know if there is an argument just because it's the viewer's fault.
I'm going to start off, not so much of an argument, but I'm just going to say, going back on your Anaheim topic, that when the Stadium Series itself was introduced in 2014, the Anaheim Ducks were a part of those teams. You had the LA Kings, the San Jose Sharks, and the Anaheim Ducks. And I want to say, off for the record, actually, that those were some of the nicest outdoor tarps that I've ever seen, especially in the Anaheim Ducks. They did make it work, and I'm pretty sure they were playing where the Angels play. Now, keep that in mind. You do make a good point. It is fairly warm in SoCal. All right? So that's probably why they haven't been back in 10 years now, a decade. They also had the game at Soldier Field, Pittsburgh versus Chicago, and then you had your New York teams in New York at the Big Apple. So coming back full circle to Chicago's 7th outdoor game now, okay, for next year's Winter Classic. I personally feel like, okay, Bedard, like you said, Dakota, he's the big thing on the block now, okay? Everyone's going to want to see him. I did make a post about this on TikTok, and it did get some feedback. I made a mention how last year's viewership was the absolute worst out of any Winter Classic, okay? And it's true. The fans didn't provide that viewership on TV. However, there was a few people who made the comment saying, regardless of that, at least it meant something to the city. And I thought, for much as the preparations that Seattle had coming into the league and now getting an outdoor game, cool. I'm happy for the city, okay? They deserved it. It's a cool experience. Have the two newest expansion teams coming in to have an outdoor game. Great. You know what? If the fans loved it, that were, you're a fan of the Golden Knights or the Kraken, great. You had an outdoor game. Fantastic. It was great for the cities. But, I mean, the Winter Classics itself as an event has just been spiraling out of control, okay? There's just too much randomness. They don't build it up. The advertisement for it sucks nowadays. They don't do the Road to the Winter Classic anymore. The best Winter Classic in history, and it shows for viewership, was the 2011 at Heinz Field, Pittsburgh versus Washington. They did the documentary weeks in advance before the game actually started, and they were building up that rivalry, okay? And I think this is what drives the viewership, is when you have two teams that has a rivalry, and you build up that momentum to go out to play their hearts out at this outdoor game, okay? You had Sid versus Ovi, one of the best rivalries in NHL history, okay? And it's still going, present day. Now you get Chicago and St. Louis, okay? They're Western Conference teams. They have a bit of a rivalry. With that said, though, you do have to give other teams a chance, okay? There are much more rivalries, much better rivalries that you could have went with, okay? Colorado, Detroit, they had a nasty rivalry in the 90s, okay? The Darren McCarty days with Claude Lemieux and Chris Draper and so on and so forth, okay? Or you could have, the Battle of South Florida. Mind you, I'm sure they could make it work, because if they made it work in Southern California, I'm sure they can make it work sometime in the winter months of Southern Florida. Or you could have Carolina, you could have Columbus. Start getting some new teams. You just pressured the fact that you had two of the newest franchises in the National Hockey League get an outdoor game. It's about time you start throwing in the mix, okay? 2012 or 2011, you had the Vancouver Canucks, and that's the last time they played an outdoor game. But it wasn't really outdoor. It was in BC Place, okay? Maybe they should do not a Heritage Classic. Maybe they should bring in a Canadian versus an American team for an outdoor game, just like they did with Toronto and Buffalo, and they called that a Heritage Classic. I think they should mix it up, maybe do a Seattle versus Vancouver game for Stadium Series, you know? I just feel that the hype around Bedard, okay, great. It's great for Chicago, but they don't need another outdoor game. They don't. We've seen it enough, you know? It's great for the city. Congratulations, okay? But nobody's going to want to go see that outside of that whole bubble.
I guess, but you got to remember too, like there's a chance that they get Macklin Celebrini too. So it could be Bedard and Celebrini headlining it, and that's even more traffic. But also, like, I think that they've so the Winter Classic is the headliner of the year for outdoor games, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's why it has to sell. It has to sell tickets. It has to be the main revenue bringer in. Then I think the other ones, the Stadium Series, the Heritage Classic, those ones are kind of like the trial runs, the
Yeah.
ones where they're seeing what these teams bring to the market in terms of an outdoor game. Obviously, Edmonton, Calgary was great. You know, me and Dakota went there. We filled that stadium with whatever 55,000 people or whatever it was. I don't know what the TV ratings were on that, but then the other trial, the Stadium Series with Vegas and Seattle, right? Like kind of flopped. And then now, don't we have the New York ones coming up, right? Isn't that
Yeah.
right? That's what those are. Yeah, so they're outdoor next. So, I mean, realistically, like,
You want rivalry games, man. That's what you want. You want teams like Calgary, Edmonton, Pittsburgh versus Philly, Detroit versus Colorado. You want them to go play their hearts out, you know, driving the fans. Chicago and St. Louis, when was the last time you guys actually seen them pick a fight with each other, okay? There's no one great to watch on Chicago anymore. Okay, maybe Bedard, but that's about it. St. Louis, couldn't name you. Maybe Jordan Bennington, maybe Kevin Hayes. Like, you guys aren't cool to watch, you know? For outside that bubble of fans, like they're not going to want to tune in, you know? You're going to want games that have good rivalries that are going to want, you know, to watch clash with each other. You know, make hockey enjoyed outdoors again. Don't just throw the same teams back in the mix and call it an outdoor game.
yeah, I'm all for it. I honestly am. Like, I want to see different teams. I want to see more new rivalries made. But again, it just comes down to business. And, you know, the owners, I'm sure, have a say too. Like, the NHL is an accumulative of the owners. And it's up to the owners too. They have to find venues partnering with the NHL, and they have to pay for venues. And right, like, it comes down to also who wants to do that, who wants to put in the effort. Just like that expansion talk we were having last episode about adding teams. It's all about who actually comes to the NHL and says, "We want this. We will pay this to get this here." Like, if some teams aren't offering it, then they can't go to it. And I just think it is about the money. Chicago, they know they can fill a stadium. They know it's going to be a big event for them. And yeah, I just think it was a no-brainer for the NHL to say, well, Stadium Series flopped, so we have to try something different. And if they can get more fans to keep viewing, then you'll see more teams and you'll see them put in more of an effort to get the Florida teams. Because let's be real, in Chicago, in the middle of winter in -10, not much of a budget to keep the ice frozen. In Florida, in Texas, in California, the budget to keep the ice is 10 times more the cost. You have to have coolers underneath, you have to have cooling in the whole area. You have to have good, and you can't have rain because the rain there is warmer than the ice, so it will melt it. So you really have to have a very perfect set of circumstances, and to plan it in a place like Florida, which has well-known like hurricanes and stuff and very rainy season, like it's hard to plan around that. And right now, right, you have that atmospheric river going through California, and California has earthquakes too. Like, you set up the whole thing and you have the ice made, and all of a sudden say there's just a mini tremor and it cracks the ice or something. Like, obviously it's extremely rare for that to happen, but it's an option. So
The
there's a lot of
70s, the 70s World Series with the Oakland A's and San Fran Giants when the earthquake struck mid-game.
yeah, exactly. Like, it's rare, but it's something that they have to keep in their mind when they're planning these events. How is it going to work? And yeah, I think it's tough. I don't see a South Florida game ever happening in South Florida. It's like when I went to Tampa in 2019, we were there November. It was November. And it was 28 degrees. Like, it was warm, and that was November. And it was, so even if it cools off 10 degrees in January, it's still like 18 degrees. And you just can't, there's no way you can get ice there. It's just impossible. That's why they had to go to Nashville, and it barely survived. They noted it was so slushy and wet to play on. So
they should just do an outdoor game where they're in rollerblades or roller skates.
That would be sick.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That would be cool.
But in
Playing on one of those.
But in like certain gear that, you know, obviously not fully hockey equipment geared, because if it's hot outside, then that's just gonna suck. But, you know, something to at least protect yourself. But, like, I think that would be sweet.
I guess it's hard because if you're going to play, like, if you have to, I mean, I think they just have to play in their gear. You'd have to, because if to play an NHL game, you have to follow the NHL's gear code. So I think you'd have to suck it up and you'd have to play in full gear. But it would be a spectacle for sure. First ever NHL game not played on ice. That would be a big idea.
Sorry, boys, but not to drag the subject, but this is another important thing I'd like to throw in there for this episode is that, like, okay, we can get the teams too, but, like, maybe even the venue. Like, this is something that I'm passionate about is, like, what if we got different venues for these teams to play? Like, what if we took it outdoors to the Rideau Canal with the Senators? Or what if we, you know, Colorado, okay? The Colorado Avalanche took their retro reverse jerseys, the Nordiques. They went out to Lake Tahoe and they played a game against Vegas. That was awesome, okay? So Lake Tahoe was a great venue. What if Calgary versus Edmonton, Battle of Alberta, took it to Lake Louise? They had the finances to build something there, right? Or what if they took it overseas to Stockholm, Sweden, or Finland? Outdoor games. That'd be perfect weather for a Winter Classic, you know? Get in new revenue with different fans around the world. Like, just maybe start thinking about different venues for these teams too. Like, different locations would be awesome. Change it up a bit, spice it up, you know?
Well, we'll never see them play on real ice. Like, we'll never see them play on an outdoor lake or on an outdoor river.
I think that's just too much of a liability.
It is,
what if the ice cracks and breaks?
No, just like at Lake Louise,
Tahoe.
but yeah, like they did at Lake Tahoe. Yeah.
Yeah.
God, yeah, that'd be way too much of a liability.
But you have to find space too, right? Like, there has to be, and also, like, you have to get now. So let's say you are taking it into nature. You have to get environmentalists involved. You have to get whatever government is involved. You have to get, if it's a national park, you have to get them involved. There's a lot of involvement in red tape over just literally calling the city and saying, hey, can we use Wrigley Field when there's no baseball going on? Like, that's a pretty easy phone call to make, rather than, hey, can we go downtown Chicago, shut off some of the city? Can we use this outdoor skating facility that we already have built, but can we turn it into an NHL rink? And then we have to shut off these streets and those streets and limit this view and that. Like, all of a sudden you get logistics rather than the facility's already there, no one's using it. They're, of course, going to take your bid because it's free money for them when they weren't going to use it anyways. And boom, there you go. Done. So,
I guess the concept's cool, but maybe, you know, all that red tape and it maybe not be so plausible, but just the ideas would be definitely not outlandish, but it would be cool to, you know, if they ventured into that, you know, gray area with new venues.
yeah, and they proved that they can do it with Lake Tahoe. Like, they obviously got all the approvals, they made it all happen. But again, that was COVID where there was no fans. So they could do it where they didn't have to care about planning for fans to be there. It was just camera crews, teams, done. Whereas you'd almost have to do that at some of those locations where you'd have to make it just a sporting event, not a fan event, which then would take away even more views. I think it would lessen the views. The only reason everyone watched the ones at Lake Tahoe was we literally couldn't go to the games. So
Sad times.
Sense. Yeah, it made sense why they were testing that type of an event, because they could. They were like, we don't have to care. Who's willing to do it? And Lake Tahoe was like, yeah, us. So, but yeah, I think it's a great idea. I think it's a great battle, and it's something that should happen. There's lots of teams that deserve games. It just comes down to desire of the owners, logistics of where they are. logistics of what venues they have available to them, and what the city could say no. Right? You could reach out to a city and say, "Hey, we want to host an outdoor game at your baseball field," and the city could say no. Like, right? They have that option of getting rejected too. So you never know what's really at play and who they're trying to get and who's saying no. Like, maybe there's one city that just denies them every year. Like, of a team, everyone's like, "Why doesn't this team host?" And the NHL doesn't just come out and say, "Nope, we get rejected every year."
I
Right?
just wish it was the year 2014 again. That was the best year for outdoor games.
Mm-hmm.
Michigan especially hosted the most outdoor games that year. The Big
Yeah.
House, Toronto, Detroit, the OHL games, Saginaw, London, Windsor, at Comerica, like it would, and then all the stadium series I mentioned earlier at Soldier
Mm-hmm.
Field and in SoCal. It was. I wish we can go back to that time period, boys.
Yeah. Unfortunately, though that it kind of peaked there. You're right. It hit
Yeah.
its peak, and now
You know what though? It was a pioneer. It was a pioneer days because that's when they just started implementing the stadium series and the outdoor games for CHL and stuff like that. So I think it was a great base to start upon.
yeah, it had to start somewhere for sure, and
Yep.
they've come a long way. But yeah, it's, again, the fans. They just you almost give people they ask and they ask and they ask and they get and they get and they get, and then they got too much, and then they go, well, it's not special anymore, and then they stop watching, and then you have to rein it back in, take it away again, bring it down to minimum, and then people have to be like, we want a game, and then okay, here's some more again. It's some give and take, because yeah, once you start losing revenue, there's no point on continuing it, right? All right, let's jump on here. This is from Rick Westhead. The Durham Regional Police Service is investigating Oshawa Generals forward Connor Lockhart. The OHL released a statement that he's been suspended indefinitely. He was once a sixth-round pick of the Vancouver Canucks in 2021, but there will be no further comment from the league at this time. So we're not going to speculate. There's rumblings about what happened, but we're not going to speculate as to what happened. And we'll just see what happens with that. Obviously bad enough that he's suspended indefinitely with the OHL because of whatever he did. Fortunate news for Matt Poitras. His year is over. He's going to miss 5 months with shoulder surgery. We have Brendan Smith, who got a 3-game suspension for hitting Noel Achari up high. What did Zadorov get? 2 games for his hit? Yeah. Zadorov got 2 games for his hit. And then Morgan Rielly just got 5 games for his. We'll talk about that one in a minute. The Flames signed Pospisil to his 2-year, $1 million contract extension. And this is kind of a cool one for us being Lightning and Colorado fans. Kucherov and MacKinnon are the first to feature multiple players with 85-plus points through their first 50 games since 1995-96 with Lemieux and Yager. So pretty cool to see them excelling at such a high level and basically just chasing each other the whole time, passing and then repassing, and they're doing a heck of a job. So it's really interesting to watch this race go down to the wire.
Healthy competition.
Exactly. Fortunate news for the Lightning and for Sergachev. He underwent successful surgery to stabilize fractures in both his tibia and fibia and his left leg. So basically the rest of the year, there's no way he comes back this year. That's just way too big of a break. So news is they're looking more into Noah Hannafin now with his salary cap, and also looking into Sean Walker on the Philadelphia Flyers. Just throw that in there.
Could you imagine Noah Hannafan's a member of the Lightning soon?
I actually said this to Dakota today. There's no way. We don't have anything that they want. We have like one good draft pick, like Isaac Howard already drafted. We have no actual draft picks left.
No prospect,
first, no
maybe.
seconds. Like we're
United.
We're an empty unit, empty cabinets over here. So there's no way we get Hannafin. I actually want Sean Walker more anyways, because we lose either one of them next year regardless. So I'd rather lose the guy we pay less for than the guy we pay more for. So that's just my thought. And maybe Sean Walker will sign. Who knows? If we can lower his cap hit, but he's in Florida, less taxes, maybe get rid of DeHaan, get rid of Fleury, get rid of Philip Myers, all those guys off the books. That's like $4 million in cap. He might want to stay. You never know.
I saw some laziness from Hannafin against the. I was watching the Rangers and Flames game last night, and I saw some laziness. Calgary had the empty net. Hannafin's just dangling with the puck in front of his own net. Pocket picked, scores 2-0 Rangers. So
Yep.
I don't know if his value is decreasing. Maybe he's playing a little bit more sloppy, but who's to say what he'll actually get if and when he gets traded from Calgary?
Who was it that I heard today? Was it Frank Saravalli, I think, that he said that Hannafin is the defensive equivalent of Gensel in the trade market. Like, Gensel's the top forward, Hannafin's the top defender, Markstrom's the top goalie. They all lead respectively in the highest trade value for asset return. Speaking of the Penguins, though, Crosby just passed Mark Recchi for 21st all-time in goals scored, so good to see for Crosby. He's got 578 now, passing a former Penguin and former Blazer, and from Kamloops, BC. So shout out to our Kamloops-born boy when he gets mentioned. Evander Kane has beat a Wayne Gretzky record. He has the fewest games to score 5 hat tricks in Oilers uniform. It took 130 Edmonton games for him to score 5 hat tricks. It took Wayne Gretzky 136 games. So congrats to Kane. Not many times you see someone break a Gretzky record, and let alone an Oiler Gretzky record. And he did it. So quite the feat. You don't think so?
No, I'm just...
Fair enough. Kane skates in his 1200th game. And then Ovi also finally passed Wayne Gretzky in goals, but just in empty nets. He has 57 empty net goals. That is the most in NHL history, which passes Wayne Gretzky, who had 56. So good for Ovi. He finally gets one up on Gretzky. We don't know if he's going to get that goal record. He has been a goal-scoring machine lately. I think he has 6 in his last 6 games. But, yeah, good for him. 57 empty net goals, most in NHL history for Alexander Ovechkin. Dallas, you just filled me in on this today, so you can chime in on this one. So the IIHF was set to meet in Zurich with their discussion around Russia and Belarus for the 2024-2025 IIHF competitions. And you told me, Dallas,
that the ban will be extended for the 24-25 season for Belarus and Russian athletes. So you will not expect to see them there.
I don't think that's a surprise. That hockey is not going to be the first sport to allow them to come back. They just won't. They won't go ahead of the Olympics. They won't go ahead of international soccer. They won't go ahead of like any of those large, more mainstream sports in the world. And they just won't. There's no way that hockey's going to be the first one to accept them back and whoever does it first gets the ridicule. That's how it's going to go. As long as they're at war, whoever does it first is going to get the ridicule. The sad thing is too, like the second the war ends, is everyone just going to be like, "Yay, Russia's back"? Like, I don't know. I still think that there needs to be some kind of a waiting period after. It's not fair to the Russian athletes whatsoever, but you can't just reward Russia for stopping killing people with them just getting invited back to everything, like.
I'm still a firm believer of keeping politics out of sports, but yeah, it is what it is at the end of the day, and we'll leave it at that.
Yeah, we don't want to get too political with it. I just think that the NHL won't be first. That's all. And none of hockey will be. Keeping it international, though, the Women's Canada team completes the comeback versus USA in the Rivalry series. They were down 3-0 in the 7-game series, and they reverse swept 4 straight games, 4 straight wins to win the Rivalry series versus the United States. So congrats to the Canada women. This is some great hockey. This is a combination with the PWHL. It's just, all around, this is just some great women's hockey going on in the world.
I think
milestones.
They actually.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think they actually had their first trade done in league history, the PWHL.
I missed that.
I didn't catch who it was, but
2 players were going from, I think, Minnesota to Boston or Boston to Minnesota, but yeah, it was pretty cool.
PWHL. Let's see if I can find it here. On this note, we also had 2 players reach their 1,000 games. We had Alex Pietrangelo, and then tonight we had Brad Marchand. So big props to those guys while I look just on them reaching their 1,000th game individually. Marchand was just tonight, so good thing we did it tonight. We got to add that in there. I don't see anything on there. Oh, right there. There it is. Okay, so from the PWHL's X page officially, trade PWHL Boston has acquired forward Suzanne Tapani and defender Abby Cook from PWHL Minnesota in exchange for defender Sophie Jacks. So there we have it. We will add that photo so you guys can all see it on the episode. But thank you, Jack. Appreciate that. Throwing that in there. Also, speaking of additions, Phil Kessel is meeting with the Vancouver Canucks, and he's going to start his conditioning stint in Abbotsford. So it sounds like he's going to join the Vancouver Canucks. So good for Phil getting back in the league. And all right, let's get to one of the hotter topics, though. Toronto Maple Leafs defender Morgan Rielly suspended 5 games for his cross-check to the head of Ridley Gregg after Ridley Gregg's breakaway slap shot. And this has been tearing the hockey world apart, I feel like, because I'm team unwritten rules. You guys are team no one said there's rules on how you score goals. And I think we should break this down because, like I said to you guys, I hated it. I think that a rookie especially shouldn't be doing that. I love what Morgan Rielly did, and I also agree, yes, Morgan Rielly should have been suspended. I think that he did the right thing. I think that he came in and showed that the Leafs have some life in them instead of just rolling over and kind of letting that happen. Like, there's just no reason when you're about to ice the game to take a slap shot in the crease. Like, I don't care who you are, it's the most slap in the face thing to the other team, especially when you're in the bottom of your division. You're already basically swagging on them enough that you've beat them and you're taking points from them. And now you slap shot into the empty net as a rookie. I mean, absolutely. Chase the guy down. And you know what? Ridley Gregg, he'll probably never slap shot a puck into the net again on a breakaway empty net. And rightfully so. And he learned his rookie rule. Realistically, he got up. He's not hurt. He played the next game. Morgan Rielly got his deserved suspension. And I think it's awesome. I'm happy for it. You have guys who love it. You have guys who hate it. I love it. You got a guy being cocky who's just a rook. He needs to learn his place in the league. If it was Connor Bedard, I'd say the same thing. Although I think Connor Bedard has a better head on his shoulders, and he's not that type of kid to do clap bombs from the top of the crease with no goalie there. Also makes you look like an idiot. Like if he missed, oh, that would have been legendary. It would have been absolute hockey karma.
Yeah, so I think anytime you pull out your goalie, you're setting yourself up to get scored on anyways. So I personally don't care that he clapped it, and I think it's also a rivalry game. Ottawa versus Toronto. Toronto thinks they're better than what they really are. I think that makes a couple of them shut up, or Morgan Rielly's case, I guess, stand up for his team a little bit. But no, Toronto's toxic. I'm all for it. So good on Greg.
Classic one here, boys. 401 rivalry, Battle of Ontario, okay? A very underappreciated rivalry in the NHL, okay? Like, I understand that the Leafs, yes, you said it best, Riley, they've been a bit soft, and they've been getting called out for it a lot, and Morgan Rielly stepped up to the plate, and he swung, literally swung. But in this case, he cross-checked Ridley Gregg in the mouth. And I get there's an unwritten rule, 100%, right? Like, you just don't slap shot on an empty net in the crease, all right? But with the same thing, I feel that Morgan Rielly could have handled it a slight different direction. Like, he could have shoved him into the boards, he could have shoved him down to the ice, But when you cross-checked him in the mouth, I think that was a bit excessive, and maybe, he deserved his 5 games. But that definitely contradicts when we go back to the conversation episodes ago of attempting to injure, right? Remember we were all debating about attempting to injure and how many games should they get, right? That clearly stated right there that that was an attempt to injure. He knew what he was doing. Okay, you're pissed off. You're losing 5-3. Okay, Ottawa, they won the game. They're bottom of the barrel, basement of the Atlantic. Okay, great. It gives their fans a little bit, something more to cheer about. Okay, great. But then you got, the high flying Toronto Maple Leafs. Okay, they lost one game. Get over yourselves. All right, let them have it. Let the fans get excited. But definitely the situation could have been handled a little bit better. You could have shoved them, like I said, into the boards or on the ice. Don't cross-check them in the mouth, all right? That's attempt to injure, and Morgan Rielly definitely deserved 5 games, if not more.
If you do look at the cross-check, he does hit him here first. He bounces off his shoulder into his mouth. So he was going lower. He did hit him in the face. Now, I think that's why he got one less game than Perron did when Perron just turned around and cross-checked Zub in the side of the head, right? It was because Perron's first point of contact was Zub's head, whereas Morgan Rielly's first point of contact was the high shoulder of Greg, which did go into the mouth. It absolutely doesn't cause an excuse for the fact that he hit him in the head. And I'm not saying he's right for doing it, but at the same time, the response was warranted. He deserves his suspension fully, whatever, 5 games. He lost $200,000 for that play. That was his fine. $195,000 of salary forfeited. It's a well-earned thing.
Okay, you want to think of this play. Remember Jacob Trouba a while back, okay? Guy thinks he's getting out there, starting first baseman for the New York Yankees kind of attitude. He swings his stick right at Trent Frederick's head, and he gets "Oh, I'm sorry" to the media, slap on the wrist, okay? And then you look at this play, and you're like, "Holy," I feel like, yeah, I feel like there's definitely different standards for different players, and I'm starting to feel like, maybe it's attempt to injure. Maybe there's some favoritism going around. I'm not too sure. But when you look at some of these dumb plays and then how much suspensions these guys are getting, it just makes you want to scratch your freaking head, man.
And I still stand by our point. So if he cross-checked Ridley Gregg in the face, let's say he broke his jaw. Ridley Gregg misses 8 weeks. Absolutely, I think Morgan Rielly should miss 8 weeks. I'm still all for our conversation when we said that. But I'm also for the unwritten rule. And when you got, again, if we were talking about Brady Tkachuk trying to stick it to the Toronto Maple Leafs, I would have a little bit less, because you know what Brady Tkachuk would have had? By the time he got to the corner, his gloves would have been off. Because he would have known what he did, he would have known it was an unwritten rule, and he would have been looking for the fight. But when you have a rookie who then turns around like, what are you trying to do? Fight me. Come on, you got to know what you're doing in this league. And if you're blatantly oblivious to it, then I think even more to it. And he said today, heat of the moment play or whatever. But yeah, I mean, we don't have to go on about it forever. But I think all around, everybody got what they deserved. And
yep.
Yeah, it's just a hockey play, man. Make hockey violent again, as Ryan Reeves said.
Proceeds to just get dumped next game.
He did. He got dumped by 5'9" Sam Walker or whatever, Nathan Walker maybe. Okay, just before we got on, we had Connor McDavid score 6 points versus Detroit to tie Pasternak at 77 for third in the NHL, 10 back of MacKinnon at 87 and 13 back of Kucherov at 90. It also led to McDavid reaching 600 assists, which was the 4th fastest to do so in history. Gretzky took 416 games, Lemieux 514, Bobby Orr 608, and Connor McDavid 616 games to reach 600 assists. This also led to him being the 3rd player in the past 25 years to record 6 assists in a single game, joining Letang in 2023 and Draisaitl in 2021. So this is all happening relatively new. Also, in the last 4 years, we've had 3 players score 6 assists in a game. So it's good to see with the amount of offense that's going on. Any words on McDavid's historic night?
No, nothing really surprising, I guess. I think everyone's just expecting it at this point that he's just going to continue to break numbers.
What else is there to say? Yeah, it's expected.
This is more of a Kucherov stat, now mentioning the Kuch is at 90. Over the past 30 years, the only players to reach 90 points in 53 or fewer games are Kucherov, McDavid, Lemieux, Yager, and Gretzky. So, again, Kucherov adding himself in rare air for points and just continuing to exceed after his noted lackadaisical effort at the All-Star game. He came back just the same, continues to lead the league, and he has been the first one to, I believe, 30 points, 40 points, 50 points, 60 points, 70 points, 80 points, and 90 points this year. So you got to give him props where props are due when it comes to racking up the points. Okay, Boston area. This is the first time I've actually heard of this tournament. You know, shame on me, whatever. NCAA fans, you know, we're in Canada. We don't hear much about these tournaments. But the Beanpot is a tournament between 4 Boston area teams, New England area teams, whatever you want to call it. Boston College, Boston University, Northeastern University, and Harvard University. And this year, Northeastern won again. They went back-to-back. The women, Northeastern, won again. They went back-to-back. And the Northeastern men have won 5 out of the last 7 Beanpots, 3 in a row from 2018 to 2020, and now the last 2 this year and last year. So a little bit of a epic dynasty going on for Northeastern in this specific tournament between these Boston teams. They beat Macklin Celebrini and Lane Hudson's Boston University in the final. So that's a big deal. And then a little bit of Canadian university history. UNB Reds go 30-0 for the first perfect season in Canadian university hockey history. So congratulations to them for doing that. I believe that's University of New Brunswick, because the teams that they showed they were beating were all Maritime East Coast teams. So congratulations again to them. All right, boys. Time for our 2 segments here at the end. We have our game day reviews and our battle of the tarps. Game day reviews this week. Dallas, you have the Los Angeles Kings. Dakota, you have the Detroit Red Wings. And I have the Chicago Blackhawks. So whoever wants to fire away, take it on.
Want to go ahead, Dolly?
Yeah, so the LA Kings, I mean, they just fired Todd McLennan. They've been on a recent streak of a 2-15 run within their last 17. They did blank the Oilers 4-0 Saturday night. Basically, that was one of the first dominant wins I think I've seen them win in a while. They're looking like they're digging themselves a pretty big hole, boys, and maybe they could add some depth at the deadline. But I see them as a very fringe wild card team at this point.
They're only 2 points safe on Nashville in the wild card race, tied with St. Louis.
I feel like when Drew Doughty called out his teammates, he thought he could pull a Devon Taves and then to go on a 12-2 run. Didn't quite seem that way, did it, boys? You know,
No,
Pierre-Luc Dubois, we went into a deep conversation about him and his ego and, you know, how he tends to bring down his team wherever he goes. I mean, he seems to be a very egotistic, self-centered superstar. Mind you, we obviously don't know him, but to keep it in the blandest of terms, I mean, it just seems like it's a common trend that wherever he goes, he wants to move on quickly and just go on the next team. And he's not happy and just seems to bring his teammates down. So I don't know. We'll see if the Kings keep him for his full 8 years.
Yeah, 8 more years at 8 million, 8.5. Oh my God! We can't go into it because it'll break the podcast. Yeah, I don't know. I just think they're 2 points ahead of Nashville. They're 3 points ahead of Calgary. They're only 4 points ahead of Seattle. All of a sudden, Seattle's back in the race. Minnesota's only 11 points back. Oh no, not even.
Poor Mini.
No,
Mini.
they're not. They're only 5 points back. So all the way down. Like the West was basically set in stone about 2 weeks ago, right before the All-Star break, and all of a sudden now you have all the way down to the 6th wildcard spot still in their hunt. And really, even Arizona, I mean, they have a huge fall from grace. They're on a 6-game losing streak, but they still at least have 50 points, only 8 back of LA. Like, there's a chance that Arizona squeaks in. Like, oh my, I don't know, man. Just the West just came out of nowhere as competitive again. You want to take on Detroit there, Jack Parr, or do you want me to do Chicago first?
No, I got Detroit. So they're sitting pretty at 5th in the Atlantic Division. I think we've talked about it a couple times. I think they're a good goalie away from being like a serious contender. And, John Gibson, we've named a few times, would, I think, definitely suit this team. Yeah, and possibly trading Patrick Kane already is a talk. So be interesting to see what they can do come deadline or finish the year. I think they just make it in if they make it, like a wild card, maybe just ahead of a wild card. But yeah, and maybe I could see them being a first round exit. Like they're not serious this year, but they are a good team. They're just a few pieces away still, I think.
They're just like New Jersey right below them. 2 points behind them is New Jersey. Detroit's in the second wild card spot. If New Jersey gets Hannafin, like we're hearing, if they get Markstrom, like we're hearing, if they maybe get Markstrom and Tanev, like we're hearing, whatever that tandem is surrounded around Markstrom, New Jersey, I think, is easily going to pass Detroit. But same thing for Detroit. So say Detroit gets like Gibson and Fowler from Anaheim. So right, like a package from Anaheim, or Gibson and Tanev, or who knows what they're going to get, right? If they get a goalie and a defender, watch out for Detroit too. Because all of a sudden, you could argue that New Jersey and Detroit are much scarier teams than the Toronto Maple Leafs, who only have 62 points. And they could easily fall out. Now, also, Tampa only has 63, and Tampa is just as likely to potentially fall out. Like in this wildcard race in the West, which actually has now kind of fallen apart, the Capitals are kind of back 10, the Penguins are back 10, and the Canadians are back 10. Like, they're all beyond. But you now have only the Islanders, the Devils, the Red Wings, and the Maple Leafs kind of in that wildcard race, with Tampa and Philly 63, 64, and Carolina 65. So, like, there's only a few teams now in the East that are really fighting for it. It kind of flipped with the West. But I don't know. Toronto could fall. I would love it. I would love to see them miss the playoffs after all this money that they've committed this year. And, realistically, like, did they win tonight?
Yes, they did.
They did. So they won without Tavares, they won without Marner, and they won without Morgan Rielly tonight. So that's a big deal for them. That means a lot, but we'll see what they can do going forward. But Detroit, if they get the right pieces, they're there. Okay, on to Chicago. Not much has changed. Everybody's hurt. Bedard's coming back in a few days, it sounds like. But yeah, I mean, train wreck of a season. Here comes MacKinnon Celebrini. That's all that they keep chanting in the streets. They're 11 points behind Columbus in the East. Like, the worst placed Eastern Conference team has 42 points. They have 31. They are on a fast track to the bottom. San Jose is only 2 points ahead of them at 33. Those two teams are massively in the MacKinnon Celebrini hunt. And to save the Arizona Coyotes, I'm calling it now, they will win the MacKinnon Celebrini lottery, and Arizona will draft him first overall. Or, you know what? Arizona might just Arizona, and they'll just draft the wrong guy first overall. They'll, like, go after Ivan Demidov, and then he won't sign America. But, yeah, that's it for Chicago. Not much has changed. Standard tank to the bottom. It helps that everyone's hurt, and Bedard will be back, and he'll put some more butts in seats. That's about all that matters for them. Okay, let's get on to our Battle of the Tarps. We have, I'm going to butcher this, it's the home jersey in the KHL of Neftekhimik, and the home jersey in the KIJHL, the away jersey in the KIJHL of the Princeton Posse. So let's debate these two right now. Let me know your thoughts. I will send those to there. Okay. All right. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I like the color scheme of Princeton Posse, but I like the overall jersey of the KHL team. I like the logo. Honestly, it's probably the logo that does it for me the most. And the blue. I like the blue, but I like the color scheme more on Princeton, but I don't know, I like the jersey more in the KHL team.
I got to go with my boys South of Merritt. You know, Princeton, they kept it simple. I just like the colors, and I like the
BU.
logo. I mean, just straight up, I got to go with Princeton.
Yeah, this was a tough one for me, to be honest. I mean, Princeton, like you mentioned Dallas earlier, very much like Boston University. You said that off camera.
Yep,
You actually thought it was Boston University when we were first talking
at
about
first
it.
glance.
But it is the Princeton Posse. This is the one team that I have played against the most. I got beat up by a 6'7" guy. That was my mistake.
Just to me,
Playing
yeah,
there.
because the logo looks so much different, and the color scheme too. The logo
Yeah,
I'm used to, at least. I'm sure you're used to at least too, with the horse and the
yeah.
Wrangler and
Or they even had like pistols at one point. But yeah, I know what you mean. But I'm definitely gonna go with Nef Tekemik in this one. The wolf logo is clean. I love the shadow on half the face. I really do. I think that the logos, like the advertisements, are well placed. I like the stripes on the arms, the stripes on the bottom. I just think it comes together clean for a European jersey. The dark blue, like you said, Dak, it's clean, it's cut. They've got the silver accents, the red accents. The red eyes on the wolf, everything. To me, it's the winner in my eyes.
they give me like last week's vibes for sure too. Remember the jersey we debated last week with the honeycomb at the bottom and like the
Yes.
cartoonish links? It kind of gives me those vibes, but I do like the color scheme for this one too.
And that is actually our winner, as you bring it up. Ilves from last week was our episode 22 Battle of the Tarps winner. So they will be progressing to verse either the Princeton Posse or Nef Tekemik from the KHL. So you guys can vote for that on our poll that we will do on X. And you can vote on any social media by repost or like to verse Ilves. We have our 2nd January semifinal between PWHL Ottawa and Red Bull Salzburg. Right now in our voting, we have Ottawa leading that, so we'll wrap up the voting on that one in our for next episode, where our final will take place versus the Merritt Centennials home jerseys. So I believe that is everything for episode 23 of Gameday Tarps podcast. As always, to everyone, thank you for listening. Listen on Spotify or anywhere that you get your podcasts. Listen on YouTube where our videos go live, and follow us on all social media. So thanks again to everyone for listening, and have a great night.